President Trump has already taken a shot at billionaire Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, who's weighing a third-party run for the White House. The president saying he doesn't have the it factor. Mr. Schultz announced over the weekend that he is seriously considering a bid for the White House. Some Democrats fear he may help President Trump get reelected by splitting an anti-Trump vote. Right now, he's traveling around the country talking about his potential run and his new book. It's called From the Ground Up, A Journey to Reimagine the Promise of America. I spoke to him earlier. Mr. Schultz, first of all, do you have a timeline of when you will decide whether or not to officially announce?
Well, what I've said publicly since last Sunday is that I want to spend the next few months traveling the country, listening and learning from the American people, and by spring or summer, I'll make a decision. But what I'm really trying to do, more than anything else, is really ask a very simple question. What kind of country do we want to live in? And I think we can do better than this, and I think the extremes of both parties are not representative of the American people, and the American people are much better than this political class.
If you want President Trump out of office so badly, as you have said you do, why not just run in the Democratic Party, especially given that you are a lifelong Democrat?
Well, what I've said is nobody wants to see President Trump fired and out of office more than me. I think a false narrative has been created in the last 48 hours that if, in fact, I ran for president as a centrist independent, there's been a rush to judgment that perhaps I would take votes away from the Democratic Party. What I believe is that there are millions of lifelong Republicans who are not interested in reelecting Donald Trump, but are not going to vote for a left-leaning, progressive, Democratic nominee. So given the choice, Donald Trump will probably be reelected. And what I really want to do is provide a better choice.
To that point, I mean, as you know, Mayor Michael Bloomberg said that he's crunched the numbers on an independent run and said, quote, the data was very clear and very consistent. Given the strong pull of partisanship and the realities of the electoral college system, there's no way an independent can win. That's a risk I refused to run in 2016, and we can't afford to run it now. Do you have your own electoral data to rebut Bloomberg?
I do, and Anderson, let me say this. I have great respect for Mayor Bloomberg, but he's not a proxy for 2020, and I would suggest that if Mayor Bloomberg did run for president in 2016, there might have been a much different outcome. But what I see is this. 42% of the electorate affiliate themselves currently as an independent. The problem is they have never had a legitimate choice. So what if they had a legitimate choice? Just think about what could happen.
Are you that different in terms of your policies and your politics than Michael Bloomberg? I mean, wouldn't he also be appealing to a lot of those Republicans who are dissatisfied with Donald Trump? And even you can make the argument Joe Biden as well is probably more centrist.
Yeah. Well, Anderson, this is not about Michael Bloomberg or Vice President Biden. This is about the American people. And what I'm saying is, and the American people agree with me, is that our politics and our government is broken.
I mean, your argument for your independent run is kind of predicated on the notion that you're the only one kind of making the argument that you're making, and in between Donald Trump and a left-leaning Democrat, if there's Michael Bloomberg or Joe Biden, doesn't that weaken your argument?
Well, no, I think this is about what the American people believe and what the American people are going to decide. Your first question is that you asked me is, how am I going to make this decision? The American people are going to make this decision. And I have come to the conclusion that the American people are disgusted and exhausted with the partisanship and the politics that exist every single day that doesn't produce any kind of solution.
Do you see anything that President Trump has done that you support?
No, I don't think there's anything that President Trump has done or support. I think the only thing he has said over the last couple of years that I agree with is when he said that he was personally responsible for the shutdown.
On Monday, President Trump went after you on Twitter saying you, quote, don't have the guts to run, unquote, and that, quote, that you're not the smartest person. Then he reportedly told supporters that the reason he took shots at you is to draw you into the race. Are the president's taunts any more or less likely to make you run? I mean, does it concern you that he's claiming he wants you to run? Do you believe what he's saying?
I'm paying very little attention to President Trump's tweets. I'm exhausted by it. I'm bored by it. And I'm not trying to win the Twitter primary.
I want to ask you about Senator Kamala Harris. You've criticized some of her more progressive proposals like Medicare for all. She was also a tough-on-crime prosecutor. Can she really be lumped in with candidates that you think are too far to the left?
Well, I don't know Senator Harris. I respect her from afar. I don't know her. What I said publicly yesterday was just responding to the fact that she came out publicly and said, with regard to government-paid free health care for all, that she would wipe out the entire insurance business, the entire industry. I mean, that is not a sensible approach to trying to solve this problem, and I think it demonstrates what's wrong with our politics.
What do you say to those who would argue that President Trump proves that the presidency shouldn't be an entry-level job in government? And also, do you feel like you know how to run against President Trump? I know you said you're not engaged in this Twitter war, you're not paying attention to that, but I mean, there were a lot of very qualified Republicans who were running against him, and he beat them all. Do you know how to beat him?
Well, I've spent the last almost 40 years building the kind of company in which we serve people. 100 million customers a week. We employ almost 400,000 people. I've spent my entire career building consensus, creating imagination and innovation, and working well with people on both sides of the aisle. President Trump, to me, is not the litmus test for the presidency and not the litmus test for what I'm going to try and do. What I will say is I'm going to do everything I can to remove President Trump from office.
And you think you have a strategy, you know how to do that? I mean, that you've gone against people like him before?
Well, I mean, President Trump is a person that fights with hate and a lot of vitriol. I view that as insecurity and weakness. What I'm going to do is I'm going to speak directly to the hearts and minds of the American people and let them decide the future of the country with regard to who the next president's going to be.
Just lastly, I've asked you about something that you tweeted today. You tweeted thanking a writer named Roger Simon, who writes for a site called PJ Media, for a, quote, thoughtful analysis of what's possible. He was saying that it's possible you could win the presidency. Your tweet has been deleted. And I'm wondering, the analysis you were referring to, was that an article written by Simon 2 days ago titled Howard Schultz could actually win the presidency? Because in that, he called Kamala Harris shrill. I think he referred to Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas. Is that why you deleted the tweet?
Well, because I don't want to get into the mud with anybody. I don't want to get into revenge politics, which has obviously been the problem that I'm identifying. I don't want to be part of mudslinging. I want to speak aspirationally and positively and do everything I can to elevate the national conversation. That is what's necessary.
So did you not realize he had made those comments?
No, I did not. I did not.
Well, Howard Schultz, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.